So about 4 years ago, I did a video talking about parallel guides. And I have featured parallel guides in multiple videos over the years because they're something that I use a lot and I find really, really valuable. In that video, I compared Woodpeckers, Seneca, and TSO products. Now at the time, the reason I compared those parallel guides for a track saw is because those were, quite honestly, three of the biggest competitors in the space. And I would argue that even today, that is probably still the case. And in that video, I demonstrated why I like the TSO products ones the best and why I thought they were the best option for your money. And if you want to watch that video, I'll leave a link down below where you can go find it. However, I'm here to tell you that the parallel guides that I show in that video will no longer be relevant because my favorite parallel guides just got even better. These are TSO's brand new parallel guides, literally just released a few hours ago, and these things are wonderful, and they have one really, really big feature that I think anybody that owns a track saw will find very beneficial. Now, before I get into talking about these new parallel guides from TSO products, for those of you that might be watching this video and you're trying to understand what parallel guides are, basically parallel guides for a track saw allow you the ability to reference material on two different points in a parallel fashion, ensuring that you get a perfectly straight and parallel cut to whatever it is that you're referencing. And the way that that works is you place your material up against these stops. These go on your track. You then slide the material against your workpiece at whatever setting you want. You make that cut. And if they are calibrated and set correctly, the result will be a perfectly parallel cut to whatever edge you're referencing. Now let me run through a quick list of all of the different track saws that this is now compatible with. You have Festool, Makita, PowerTech, Wen, Milwaukee, Craig, and Rigid. All the big manufacturers are some of the most common track saws that are out on the market. There is not another brand on the market that has been able to make a head design that will work with all of those different rails. And TSO has figured out how to do that, and the way that they've done it is really cool, and I'm about to show you. But first, so this is a 20-inch set. I'm gonna set up a 30-inch set and walk you through exactly how you set it up. It's super easy how you get it dialed in to your particular track saw. And then I'm gonna do a cut to demonstrate just how accurate these are. But I also wanna make sure that I talk about all of the different features that really separate these from not only all the other brands that are on the market, but their own previous version of the parallel guides that I've loved and I've used for years. So let's go ahead and set one of these up really quick. I'll show you how to get it all calibrated, and then we'll talk very closely about some of these key features and how they work. Start by taking out the rails. You're gonna get this in two boxes. One box is going to have the rails that you see right here. And this is a new rail design, which I will get into once I start showing you the differences between the two. And then the second box, you're gonna have one of their hex screwdrivers. You're gonna get two of the guide rail attachment heads. You're gonna get two of the new flip stops. Finally, you're gonna have 2 bags of machine screws. Now the first step is we're gonna attach these heads that go on the rails. Start by flipping each one of these over. You'll notice that there are 4 holes on each one that are going to end up being self-centering. And we are going to slide the heads into the end of the rails just like this. And we're going to take each one of these screws and start to screw them in. I'm not going to tighten any of these down just yet. I find anytime you're using self-centering machine stuff, it's still always better to get all 4 screws in first before tightening anything down too tight. Once I have all the screws in pretty close to being tight, I'm going to tighten each one of them down to ensure that we have a good, strong connection. Now that each one of the heads is attached, we can flip these over and place our new flip stops. These operate with these nuts on the bottom that will slide into the rail itself, and they are spring-loaded, which is a nice feature, and it was one of my favorite features about the previous generation. This is going to go on just like that. We'll just lock it down there for now. Now with this particular setup, you'll notice that I have the flip stops facing the inside of the parallel guides. And once you have those on, we can move on to the calibration piece. Obviously, before we calibrate these, we need to make sure that they're connected to the guide rail. And this is the part that I'm super excited to show you guys, and what really separates these things from any other option now. And that is how this attaches. You'll notice that there is a cutout here because it's going to allow it to go in at an angle. So what they've done is they've created this spring-loaded clip that is going to connect to the rail and lock it in place. Now the way that these go on is you're going to press forward on this spring-loaded clip, go down at a 45, and drop that on. This will then retract, and now it is locked in place. Now you'll see that this still does move freely side to side, but right now we don't have it fully calibrated to the track. If you notice, I've got a little bit of movement left and right. So let me show you the very next step on how to get rid of this slop, and also show exactly why this is now compatible with so many different tracks. Now what you're going to see here is a nylon set screw. So this side has a 3mm hex, and the back side of this that's actually going to touch the track is nylon. The benefit to having it be nylon is the fact that it's not going to mess up your track, right? So if we were to screw a regular screw into this, it would just keep putting all these indentations. The nylon obviously solves that problem. But we have one set screw here, and we have one set screw over here. What we're looking to do is tighten each one of these set screws to where it's nice and tight, but will still allow us to move this side to side, similar to what you would do with a track saw on a track to remove the slop. Same idea applies to this, and now I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. I've got a much wider angle because what I need you guys to see is all going to be out here on the actual rail. What we first need to do is tighten these all the way down, and when I tighten this down, you're going to see this back end is going to raise up off the table. Just like that. And I've done an extreme example of what that looks like, and I'm also making sure that I place pressure on the track itself because I want this to be as accurate as possible. Now, once I have that off the table, it's too tight. Like, I can't even move the parallel guide. So in order to calibrate this perfectly, we're now going to back off until that sits flat on the table, which now it sits flat. I'm going to repeat that process over here on this side. And tighten this down till we raise it up off the table, and I'm going to back this off until it sits flat. Probably back it off just a bit more. Now I do not have that side-to-side slop anymore, and I'm still able to move this left and right if I need to, but we are nice and tight. And that is how you ensure that this fits whatever track it is that you have. Next, I'm going to show you how you go about calibrating your flip stop to your track. Obviously, what we're trying to achieve is to make sure that our stop is calibrated perfectly to the cut edge of whatever track saw or track that you have. The way that I like to do that, you could use a combination square, you could really use any sort of reference, but here I'm using a Polini pocket rule. I've got it set to 8 inches. I'm going to make sure that my flip stop is set to 8 inches. Make sure that's on the table. I will slide this underneath my track here and make sure that this is down touching the table. And you'll notice I have I'd say a little over 1/8 of an inch gap. What we're going to do is on the back side of this flip stop, there is again a 3mm screw. From here, we want to turn and adjust this to where I'm just barely touching the rule. Once I see that gap disappear, I know that I'm set, and I do the same thing to the other flip stop. I wanted to give you a close-up on the back side of this. And this is where the 3mm hex is that you can adjust to make this plunger go in and out. And one thing that I want to address about this is that it was designed in a way to prevent any sort of backlash, right? So pushing on the plunger or pushing this up against material is not going to cause that plunger to go in. Once you adjust it and set it, it's set. But like any tool that you have that has moving pieces for components, you know, I'm sure that at some point I'm going to double check and make sure that this is still set to my original setting, but this was designed with that particular thing in mind. Now, it wouldn't make any sense to show you how to do the calibration and not make a cut. So let's do that. I'm going to move this in just a bit here. Really nice that you can put this on there. You know with 100% certainty that it's going to be nice and rigid, and you can slide them side to side. I know this board is 15.5, so let's go ahead and we'll put this on 15.25 and just shave off a little strip, and then I'll get you guys a close-up of the accuracy of this. Set that one, got this one set. We're gonna butt this up against my material, and we will make our cut. So to show you exactly 15.25, let's move to the other side. And here's the other side, 15.25. Now I want to address a few of the differences between these and the previous generation, and we'll start with how it attaches. Now with most other previous generations, it's some sort of slide-on option that usually needs to be tightened down if you want it to be secure. So here's a really good example of the previous version, TSO Products parallel guide. It goes on, clamps down, and now it's secure, but you do not have the ability to move it if you want to. So it's very secure, but if I want to move it or slide it based off the size of the material, I have to loosen these and do so. So you always have to have that 3mm hex screwdriver on hand. Now there are some other options, and TSO made some drop-on versions, and by drop-on I essentially mean depending on the track that you have. In this case, let's say you have a festival track, you can actually get one and it just drops directly on and straddles and gives you the ability to adjust this to make sure that it fits that track perfectly. The downside to this is when it's a drop-on, yes, you can move it side to side, but it isn't actually secured to the material. Now, you obviously had the weight of the parallel guides on top of it, but if you were to lift this thing up, theoretically speaking, if you didn't have these adjusted really tight, which would prevent you from moving it, they could fall off, which then would damage. But it was a drop-on option. It was a really nice, quick way to get your parallel guides on. Now, we have the ability to drop it on, lock it in place, and still have the ability to move it left and right if needed. I do want to give you a real close-up of this just so you can see it. You'll notice that it has all of these different ridges, and that's for it to fit within whatever track it is that you have. This is a better shot of the angle because you have to go in at an angle just like that. Now you can get a really good view of what this looks like. And then also on the bottom here, if you look down in there like that, you'll see that spring-loaded clip, and when I push it out of the way, it allows me to drop it down onto it, and then I retract and it will lock in place. Next, I want to highlight the form factor of the head. So the head itself on the new one is actually smaller than the previous, but more importantly, you saw how I attach this, and that's through 4 machine screws from the underside that allow it to self-center. This, on the other hand, is held on by these knobs, and between the previous version and the new version, I just feel like this is a much more secure connection than these. Even though I never personally had any issues with these coming loose, it is something that protrudes higher than the actual parallel guide itself, which could cause problems getting caught on hoses or power cables as you're using your parallel guides. So that's a really nice change from the previous version to the new version. The next thing is you'll notice that the rail itself is actually different from the previous rail. This is more of a universal rail, meaning it can be used from either side because it matches on both sides, and we still do have the scale in the center. Something I'd like to highlight is that it is both imperial and metric, but the last one was as well. So now I'm going to address what I find to be another huge improvement, huge upgrade from the previous model, and that is the flip stop. One thing that they did keep the same between the two, and this was one of my favorite features, especially that I talked about in the previous video. If you loosen these knobs right here, you can slide this freely left to right, but this is actually spring-loaded. So it will stay where it is. It won't slide back and forth independently. You actually have to move it, or you can push down on this and it glides left and right really, really easily. So I loved that about these flip stops over all of the other competitors that I compared these to. So to see them put that in the new one is a huge bonus for me because I think that that's something that they did really, really well. Now, the other thing that I really like and I want to highlight on the new ones, you will see the flip stop between the two are very different in terms of size. And that's actually quite important, I find, in terms of surface area and stability. I never had any stability issues with this. I think it was designed very well, but this is just a much larger platform, and the flip stop itself allows for no deflection whatsoever. Next thing is this mechanism right here. I showed you how to adjust that. This is a calibration tool used to ensure that your parallel guides are set properly. With this one, the new model, you saw that you just had that one set screw in the back that prevents any sort of backlash and makes it very, very easy to fine-tune it, as where this one, you'll actually see that there are 2 screws here. So we have a stop collar here, and we also have this screw, which actually allows the entire plunge mechanism to move back and forth. Obviously, this has 2 separate steps that need to be gone through in order to adjust and have it adjusted and make sure that there's no movement. But with this, it's just 1 screw and it's good to go. And because this has the prevented backlash and this not worrying about going back into it as you use the tool, one thing that's different about this, the stop collar was designed to stop that, and then this was set to stop the bar. So with this, it's kind of like an insurance policy, right? We have the stop collar and we can do this mechanism, but that's 2 steps when this is a better design because it is now just 1 step. Last thing that I want to highlight is the cursors. So with the previous model, you had this metal piece here, and this is fairly tall. So the issue that you could have is as you're trying to look down to make sure that you're lined up, it can be a little bit more challenging because you have a much taller sight line that you're looking down. So it could be easier to not get the 2 lined up exactly the same. So a huge improvement that they made, you'll notice here, it comes to a very sharp point. There is a nice little slope right here, and it comes to a very sharp point that sits perfectly flat. Let me lock this down. That sits perfectly flat on the rail. So what that allows is if I want to make sure that I'm getting lined up, we'll say right on 15 inches, I know right when I'm on 15 inches with that cursor, because it comes to that jagged, sharp point, and that parallax effect is essentially gone. So I find this one significantly easier to read and make sure that the other one matches it perfectly. So this is a humongous improvement on making sure that you can get accurate measurements on your first try without fiddling around too much. All right, now I want to cover some of the additional information about these. One thing in the past, and I can't tell you how many times I got these comments on my video, and it was people always getting frustrated because when they would go to the website to order the parallel guides, the previous generation, the ones that I covered in that video, it could be a bit overwhelming, and simply for the fact that like you'd go there and then you'd pick the length that you wanted, and then it took you somewhere else and asked you the size head or the type of head that you needed, whether it was a drop-on, what track saw you had, and some people found it a little bit frustrating. And also, depending on which ones you picked, did increase the cost just a little bit. One of the great parts about these new ones is that it'll literally just be a buy once and that's it. Like there is no picking special heads for your track. It's just they work with all tracks. And again, why somebody else hasn't figured that out up to this point, I'm not really sure. So good on TSO for figuring out a way to do that. I kind of honestly wish that I would have figured out how to do that. But you can get them in different lengths. So they're going to offer these the same way that they did before. You have a 20-inch set. That's what these are right here, the real short ones. When I refer to set or system, that means that it is coming with everything that you saw me put together, right? It comes with the heads, it comes with the rail, and it also comes with the stop. So that is a set. There's no, I need to buy additional things. That's just what it is. This is what would come. Then you can also get a 30-inch set. They also offer a 50-inch set. Those are all the ways that you can buy them individually with the pieces that I showed in this video. They also offer the 30 and 50-inch set. That will come with both the 30-inch rails and the 50-inch rails, but they will only come with one set of heads and one set of flip stops. Those would be switched between the two. So if you wanted to just have them on there all the time for both pair, then you would just buy a separate set of flip stops and a separate set of heads that attach to the guide rail. The other thing that they'll offer is the rails in those sizes and just the rail. So if you bought a 30-50 set and you decided that you wanted a pair of the 20-inch rails, because you might use those from time to time, you could just buy the rails. So a lot of different options to configure it however you would see fit. Now, the next thing that I'm going to cover that I know I'm going to get questions about, and that'll be like, well, can I still use my guide rail square from TSO with these parallel guides? And the answer is yes. And for those of you that didn't know, you can actually connect these guide rail squares to your parallel guides to reference off of not only one side, but also an end as well. Me personally, I've never found the need to do that. You can do it with these. One of the downsides is that when you do that, there was no visible window to see the edge of your material to ensure that your guide rail square was super tight up against it, as where that is actually not the case with the new ones. And I don't have the adapter for this to show you in the video. I'll throw a picture of it up here on the screen now. But you can use your guide rail square with these new ones if you purchase the optional attachment piece. And the other benefit to that is that it does actually give you a small window to where you can make sure that your guide rail is perfectly flat up against your reference surface. So that's also an improvement. The other thing that I know people are going to ask about has to do with thin stock guides. TSO actually does have them for this as well. It is an additional accessory that you can purchase. I'm pretty confident in saying that most people probably do not use that, and that is why they took it out of the set if you choose to buy it. TSO actually has a completely separate system for utilizing your track to do thin rips without even using parallel guides. It's actually a much more streamlined setup. I'll put a link to that down below if you guys want to find out more. It's not nearly as cumbersome as using parallel guides. But again, I think most people don't do it. I've done it probably 2 or 3 times. I find thin rip guides for parallel guides to be cumbersome, finicky, and just kind of not enjoyable to use. I actually prefer other methods, whether it's using a table saw or whether it's just marking on the board and using the track, or the optional accessory that you can get from TSO products as well, because it is a very lightweight, easy system to use, and it's given me really, really good results. And finally, I'll go over the cost associated if you were to order these. I mean, you can click the link to the website and you can go check the pricing, but I'll just tell you in this video. But I saved this until this part because all of those things that I just mentioned, how it doesn't come with the thin rip guides, it does not come with the bracket to attach your guide rail up to it. What I have noticed just by looking at the price of these and the added benefits and quite frankly the better operation, and it's universal, is that they made a better product that is universal and actually were able to keep the cost down. And the way they kept the cost down on that, and again, I said I made that video 4 years ago, and even back then, they had been out for a while. Imagine how much the price of materials has raised during that time. So I think what they did was smart and took out all of the optional things that most people don't need and most people don't use in an effort to keep these more affordable to the masses. And so I think that that is really, really good. And I certainly was expecting these to be more expensive than the previous model, but that is not the case. So the pricing is as follows, and I'm gonna grab my book because I have it written down. So for the 20-inch set right here, everything you see right here, it is $329.95. 30-inch set, $349.95. And then the 30-50 combo comes in at $489.95. And again, that comes with the 30-inch rails and the 50-inch rails and one pair of the heads and a pair of the stops. I also mentioned that you can purchase the individual rail pieces. So a 20-inch rail piece comes in at $84.95, 30-inch, $104.95, and a 50-inch, $144.95. That's going to do it for this video. Hopefully you found the information useful. I know I'm super excited about having these now because it just makes my life easier. It makes using parallel guides so much simpler and so much faster. And I will be utilizing these as I build my vanity. Thanks.